Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find us on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you'll consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and speech writing needs. I am delighted to be joined today by Robert Klausner, CPA of P&K CPAs. We're going to be discussing the tax implications of COVID-19. Rob, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Bruce. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Please take a minute or two and introduce yourself to our viewers.
My name is Robert Klausner. I'm a tax partner at P&K CPAs. We're located in Parsippany, New Jersey. We're a mid-sized firm. We have two offices in Parsippany and Basking Ridge, New Jersey. And we handle all aspects of tax, accounting, small business consulting, and payroll and bookkeeping.
Now, you don't only have clients in New Jersey.
No, we have clients all over the world.
Huh.
We have some international clients, but we have clients all over the United States, certainly.
Just wanted to clarify that. Now, our topic, everybody today is talking about COVID-19. And one of the things that I like to do at the end of the day is, I don't know if you remember the old Dick Cavett show.
It's a little before my time, but okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I remember it, and we're not that different in it. It's, I don't know if you watch it, but there's a station called Decades, and they have the old shows.
Oh, wow.
And I enjoy his interviewing style, and I pick up a few things. And plus, I learn from the interviews. And this was before my time, technically. But Jack Parr, the first host of the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
So he was his guest, 30 years ago, but a couple nights ago. And he said something interesting. He said, this isn't really an interview. It's a conversation. An interview is different. And I like that. So let's have a conversation instead of an interview. So our topic is the tax implications of COVID-19. In general, what are we dealing with here?
So, all right. So the basic things that have come out, obviously everybody's aware of. We're past April 15th. Everything that was due April 15th, whether it was a filing or a tax payment, was delayed, automatically extended to July 15th. So a lot of people are going to find, even if they file today, their payments aren't due until July 15th. They're interest-free, penalty-free. The estimates for 2020 have been delayed till July 15th. For federal purposes, certainly first and second quarter, so we'll be doubled up in July. Some of the states have not done that, have not pushed the second quarter. They pushed everybody pushed the first quarter to July 15th. The second quarter, which is due June 15th normally, is in a lot of states, such as New Jersey and New York, is still due June 15th. So it's going to be a little wacky for everybody this year.
Now, you don't have to pay. If you owe, you don't have to pay. But will you be charged? Will there be any penalties, fees?
No.
Interest, anything like that?
So if you normally file April 15th and you owe money, you could file today, but they will not take the money, or it's not due. Some people do it direct debit, others still do the old-fashioned mail a check with a voucher. But they are due to be postmarked by July 15th, and all interest and penalties have been suspended for this year.
Understood.
There is still talk that they may extend it further. Actually, they depending on how things go over the next probably 4 to 6 weeks, will depend on whether they extend it even further from July to September.
Now, the government, of course, has given us new acronyms. Government loves acronyms. So let's start with PPP. What is PPP, and what are the PPP loans?
So the PPP was the Paycheck Protection Program, was set up for small business owners that to help them bridge the gap. Everybody got this hit the country very quickly back in February, and a lot of companies were forced to shut down quickly and they had an immediate loss of revenue, and in a lot of cases staff as well, that they were forced to furlough or lay off. So the PPP is a paycheck protection program that they put out to give you a 2 months worth of a bridge loan, and starts off as a loan. Everybody ran for this because they said that this would potentially be forgiven and be free money. And so everybody ran for that. You heard it all over the news, all these big companies that found the loophole around it, because it was for companies that had 500 or less than 500 employees, including sole proprietors. And so if you're self-employed and you're working on your own, you could still file for this. But they ran out of money very quickly in the first round. Because everybody said, oh, it's going to be free money. So it's not, it is free money in that it's a bridge for the 2 months where they will take when you figure out the calculation, there's several things to look at for your payroll costs and your health insurance, rent, utilities, those types of things. But 75% of the money requested must be used for payroll costs. The idea was to help employers who had to lay off people, take them off unemployment. So they were supposed to hire people back out of unemployment, to whether they had work or not, to pay them this salaries for that period of 8 weeks from the time you got funded, which was in the last few weeks. A lot of employers were finding people don't want to get off unemployment because the unemployment was bolstered by the Fed, and they were giving state unemployment benefits plus then an additional $600 a week from the federal government. So people, in a lot of cases, people were making more on unemployment than they were working. So that's causing still other issues that we're trying to that the SBA is trying to work out and give guidance on.
Two things. First, will the money, if it's forgiven, if the loan is forgiven and it becomes a grant, is it taxable, or will it be taxable next year?
So no, it will not. So what happens is, but the corresponding expenses that were paid with that money are also not deductible.
Which means, for example,
so like the example you got $100,000, so 75% of that had to be used for payroll, the other 25, and so assume you did everything right, and the bank says, okay, it's forgiven. You used it for payroll and the proper items. The bank says it's forgiven, so you can remove the money from income, but you also have to take that $100,000 of expenses that you paid and remove that as well. So that's the way when you book it, you're going to debit cash and you're going to credit loan payable. And then if they say it's forgiven, the only way to get rid of the loan payable would be to debit the loan payable, and you have to credit something else. It's either income or it's the expenses that you used to pay it. So you'll have to remove those from your profit and loss statement.
Understood. Now you said that this is also for, if I heard you correctly, for the self-employed.
Yes. So if you're a sole proprietor or if you're self-employed, you can.
But you don't have any employees.
Right. So what they do is they will take if you're filing a Schedule C as a self-employed individual, or if you have an LLC, they would take your information from 2019 and or 18 if 19 wasn't filed yet, and they would look at what your net income was for the year, and they would allow you to take 2 months worth. So if you made $12,000 as your net Schedule C income at the end of last year, you would get $2,000 on PPP money to be used. Okay.
Now, how is this related to the stimulus check?
It's not related at all. So the stimulus checks are a federal grant that they wanted to get everybody to give to help, just again, as it says, a stimulus to help the economy. So they gave, if you qualified based on the income levels, everybody got a check for $1,200 or $1,200 plus $500 for your qualifying children, etc. That there was some income limitations that you had to meet in order to get those.
Now, in addition to everything else, you referred to unemployment, and that people are making out better now than they were before because of the additional $600 they get a week. But for the self-employed, how does the unemployment insurance work in this case? And what happens if you get denied by your state? Because
Okay,
first
so I
you
can
apply
only,
for state unemployment.
right. So it has to go through, you have to start with your state unemployment system. I'm somewhat familiar with New Jersey and New York, but I can't speak to the other states around the country. But
Yeah.
it all starts the same. There is no federal unemployment to apply to, so you have to start with the state unemployment. You file. You have to put yourself down as the employer that you left, and that when work terminated, that it all came to a screeching halt back in February or March, and the state will then most likely give you a confirmation that you registered. They will then give you a confirmation that you're in the system, but you're denied because their system's not set up to pay self-employed people, but that you will then be moved over to the federal unemployment system, which is called the PUA, and that will then supposedly kick in and allow you to get up to $600 a week.
And is that money going to be taxable?
Yes. So like any other unemployment insurance that you receive, unemployment benefits, it will be taxable, certainly at the federal level, and it depends on the state as to whether it's taxable at the state level.
So what about Jersey and New York?
New York does tax the unemployment. New Jersey does not.
That's good, since I'm in Jersey.
It's a rare benefit for New Jersey.
It doesn't balance off the property tax.
No, not at all. New Jersey went from one of the worst, it was one of the better states years ago to now one of the worst tax-wise.
Tax-wise. Now, when you are booking this, you would put it in under a income?
Which?
Or the unemployment insurance? If you're self-employed.
Well, if you're
because,
self-employed, that's personal. It has nothing to do with the business. So it's separate. You're going to get, and you'll get a separate 1099, or you should make sure that you know how to download your 1099. The state is very bad about sending them out at the end of the year, and then but then people forget about it months later, and so you want to make sure you know how to get it back into the system and download your 1099 at the end of the year. But that will be taxable at the end of the year. So you don't have to book it in your business per se, because it's a separate from the business income. It's not subject to self-employment tax, etc.
But the PPP loan, you would put in your business.
PPP loan earned that are received by businesses, yes, should be booked. We're advising clients to set up separate, if you can, a separate bank account. If not, certainly set up a separate spreadsheet to track the money very carefully if you want to be able to qualify for forgiveness. If you don't qualify, it's not terrible either. The loan is at a very low rate. It's a 1% loan for 2 years. So and there is partial forgiveness if you don't qualify. Some people don't have, maybe they can't get all their employees, because they are going to look at the number of employees you had the same time last year so there's a full-time employee equivalent that they're going to look at that will, if you can't, maybe somebody doesn't want to come back, or they left, or whatever, for whatever reason, if you can't get back that number, so you may get partial forgiveness and have some of it that is still repayable.
You mentioned something, it's a little bit off topic, but that the loans are today at an extremely low rate. They're talking about how right now President Trump is saying that they're paying zero for loans because the federal rate is zero. And then they start talking about a negative interest rate. Can you explain what a negative interest rate is?
Well, so they're going to basically be giving the money away at a discount. They'll be utilizing probably bonds that would then be utilizing a discount on the actual, and the government would be paying the difference on it. But most loans, if they're tied to the federal rates, they're usually in a Fed rate +1, +2, +3, whatever. When you go look at your, if there's adjustable rate mortgages and things of that nature, they any kind of loan, usually lines of credit are usually tied to the Fed rate, and they're usually like +2 or +3 or whatever. So this is an SBA loan that they're offering. The PPP that we're talking about is from the Small Business Administration, and that was a special thing that they said if it's not forgiven, it's to be paid back within 2 years, and it's only a flat 1% interest rate. They are also offering other loans for small businesses if you need to get back on your feet and you need to ramp back up and you need capital. So they put out a 10-year 4% loan that small businesses can apply for.
That 25%, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, can be used for anything.
No. So they said 75% of the loan. So when they did the calculation, they basically took your payroll costs and they multiplied it by 2.5. And then they said 75% of it has to be used for payroll costs. And the other 25% can be used for either rent, mortgage interest, or utilities. And those are the other qualifying items. You can't go buy a car. You can't go pay for your jet ski. You can't go.
No, but what about paying for a new computer?
That was not as the list of qualifying items, unfortunately. They said basically this was a bridge loan just to get you back on your feet and to keep the bills going. A new computer wasn't necessary unless you can show, I guess, maybe that, hey, my other computer fried because of the coronavirus, and I need a new one. But otherwise, they were basically looking to help people pay their bills for the 2 months bridge to hopefully get back. They were hoping that this was going to be done in 2 months and that the people would be able to go back to work in that time. So they paid their rent, they paid their mortgage, they paid their utilities to get those bills, from out of delinquency if they were, and allows the business to breathe a little bit, hoping that things come back to some semblance of normalcy in the coming weeks.
And finally, just to clarify, because there's always confusion about what the definition of a small business is. For current purposes, a small business is any company with less than 500 employees, and self-employed means you don't have any employees.
No, you can still have, because I'll tell you technically I'm self-employed, but my firm, but we're the way it's worked, and we have employees. So self-employed though just means you are not a salaried employee of a company, and you are you are responsible for your taxes and your expenses and things of that nature. Maybe you are a consultant like yourself. You're a consultant for multiple companies, and you receive your earnings from different places. So those are. But yes, so anybody from a sole consultant to a larger corporation that has up to 499 employees can qualify for this. I mean, the loan period is probably going to close soon. They did 2 rounds. The first round went very quickly, as everybody knows. They then re-established some new rules, which they didn't have in the first round, and they put out the second round about a week and a half ago. So at this point, but I believe they are still taking applications for if people haven't gotten it. But yes, otherwise it should be done soon.
Now, when I applied, I found it interesting. They specifically said that you can't apply if you are involved in any way, shape, or form with pornography. Right. And fine, I don't have a problem with that. Let me make it clear, I don't have a problem with the government saying we're not going to pay for pornography. And they also said, if you are involved with something which is a violation of federal law. Now, for New York and New Jersey, that I don't think is relevant, but Colorado, for example, where there's billions of dollars in marijuana legally sold on the state level, illegally on the federal level, they could not apply for any of this.
I don't believe so. But they also are already reopened. Whereas, so they didn't wait very long.
You mean the states? I thought you meant
No, Colorado is
the
one
yeah,
of
it
the
was
early states that did reopen already.
maybe marijuana isn't so bad after all.
Might not be. Might be a cure.
Let's not get into that. It's above our pay scale. As I like to say, I'm not that type of doctor. What haven't I asked you that you think it's important for our viewers to know? It's a terrible question, I know, but it's proving a negative. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that our viewers know about the tax situation with COVID-19?
So there's a lot of things that and the CARES Act that came out at the beginning of this has a lot of other acts. So if you did, for businesses that didn't choose or have the opportunity to participate in the PPP loan, there is a payroll tax credit that will be available to small employers who did not take the PPP loan. You can't do both. So there is a credit for the back half of the year where they will be able to take credits on their quarterly payroll filings for their employees. So that is something that is important for people to know, that there's not, if you missed the PPP filing, or you, for whatever reason, didn't do it, or your bank did, maybe a lot of the big banks didn't. Some banks didn't participate. Everybody was available to participate, but some banks chose not to, saying that they weren't SBA lenders or whatever it was. But it was clear that all banks or financial institutions of any kind, because there were a lot of PayPal is not a bank, but yet they were participating in funding these loans. So there was a lot of institutions like that did step up to help out with this. So so everybody's just got to do what they have to do. Hopefully, they're not, the unemployment isn't a incentive to stay home and not do the work. We got to get the economy back working and see what happens. But the tax-wise, there's going to be a lot of changes and a lot of guidance coming out over the coming months that will change this year drastically. Just whether it's the delay in filing 2019 payments for 2020, there's a lot of things that are changing. So they should just make sure they keep up. If anybody has a question, they can certainly visit our website. I'm posting information almost daily, several times a week. We post stuff on the website, or I send out blast emails, and just to keep things moving and so everybody stays informed.
I've just put up your, as I think you can see, your contact information. Rob, I want to thank you profusely. As always, you've provided a wealth of information in a manner that even I can understand.
Good to hear. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you very much, Rob. I'm Bruce Hurwitz. Thank you for watching. And as always, please stay focused on success.